You know that feeling when the inbox is just completely
Oh,
overflowing
absolutely.
and your calendar is just this solid wall of double bookings and every single notification sound makes your eye physically twitch?
It is the absolute worst.
It really is. And, there is this very specific modern fantasy that kicks in when that happens. You just picture yourself dropping your phone in a lake, walking away from it all, and moving to a tiny, quiet cabin in the woods.
Right, just absolute isolation, peace and quiet.
Exactly. But it's a beautiful fantasy until reality hits and you realize, well, I can't exactly walk away from my mortgage or my family or, my responsibilities.
Yeah, it is incredibly tempting, though. I mean, we operate under this assumption that by removing the chaotic environment, we automatically remove the chaos inside our minds.
Right.
We think peace is a place we can travel to rather than a state we actually have to cultivate.
Right. So before you rage quit your life and put a down payment on that cabin, let's look at the stack of research you sent us. Today, we are taking a deep dive into Chapter 5 of the Bhagavad Gita.
Yes, a really profound text.
And we're tapping into the commentaries of scholars from the Chinmaya Mission, Advaitam, and Swami Mukundananda. Basically, our mission today is to figure out if you actually need to escape the world to find peace, or if there's a way to, stay in the chaos without losing your mind.
Which is a dilemma that humans have been wrestling with for thousands of years.
Yeah.
I mean, the conversation we are looking at today features Prince Arjuna, who is literally standing on a battlefield.
Right, a literal war zone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he is paralyzed by this massive moral and existential crisis. He's just overwhelmed by what he's being asked to do, and he turns to his guide, Lord Krishna, looking for an escape hatch.
Because leading up to this chapter, Arjuna has been given some incredibly confusing advice, right?
Very confusing.
Like, Krishna has praised the renunciation of action, which is essentially becoming a secluded monk. But he has also heavily praised the yoga of action, which means staying actively engaged in society.
Right, he's basically been given two entirely different life paths.
So Arjuna is essentially saying, please, give me a straight answer. Which path is actually better? He just wants the bottom line.
And to understand the weight of his confusion, we have to clearly define these two distinct lifestyles that are presented in our sources. So the first is Nivritha Marga.
Nivritha Marga.
Yes,
Right.
this is the path of the secluded life. A person on this path gives up all physical possessions, social duties, family life. They step away from the world completely to focus solely on contemplation.
So that is the ultimate version of the cabin in the woods.
Exactly, the ultimate rage quit. And the second path is Pravritha Marga. This is an active life in society. You have wealth, a family, a job, social responsibilities. You are just right in the thick of it, dealing with the daily grind.
Right.
And Arjuna wants to know if he has to take that first path, the totally secluded one, to achieve ultimate liberation and inner peace.
Okay, let's unpack this. Is Krishna basically warning us that running away from our problems doesn't actually solve them? Because when I think about rage quitting my job and moving to the woods, I usually conveniently forget that I'm taking my own anxious brain with me.
Right. And that is the precise psychological trap the ancient texts are pointing out. Krishna actually delivers a very clear verdict here.
Oh, he does.
Yes. While both paths can technically lead to liberation, engaging in the world, which is called karma yoga, is actually superior and far more practical for the vast majority of people.
Really? Because that feels, I don't know, counterintuitive. We usually assume the monk meditating in a cave is somehow holier or more enlightened than the person stuck in rush hour traffic.
It is a super common misconception.
So why does Krishna say the active path is superior?
Well, the Advaita commentary offers a really brilliant psychological insight here. Human relationships and daily responsibilities actually act as a grounding mechanism. They are crucial for maintaining our mental sanity.
Wait, really? Our stresses are actually keeping us sane.
In a way, yes. Because if a person takes up the life of a monk without undergoing years of intense mental preparation and purification, that sudden isolation doesn't bring peace. It brings crushing loneliness, frustration, and often delusion.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, I mean, you still have all your desires, your ego, and your anxieties, but now you have no outlet, no daily duties to distract you, and crucially, no social feedback loop to keep your ego in check.
So you're basically just sitting in your cabin, staring at a tree and obsessing over the Wi-Fi you don't have or, arguments you had 10 years ago.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the texts are trying to redefine what renunciation actually means. True renunciation isn't about giving up your actions or, changing your zip code. It is about giving up the anxiety about the results of your actions.
The anxiety about the result.
Right. It's an internal psychological shift, not a geographical one. You don't renounce the world, you renounce your psychological dependence on how the world reacts to you.
Okay, that sounds great in theory, but let's talk about the listener for a second. If you are listening to this on your commute right now, think about your inbox waiting for you, or that difficult client you have to deal with at 10 a.m.
Oh, yeah.
If we are supposed to stay in this messy, demanding world, how do we avoid getting emotionally destroyed by it? I mean, the burnout is a very real physical phenomenon.
It absolutely is. And the sources offer a really stunning recurring metaphor to address exactly how we survive the mess. It's found in verse 5.10. It's the metaphor of the lotus leaf, or Padmapatram ivambasa.
Okay, what makes the lotus leaf so special?
Well, think about the environment where a lotus grows. It's born in the thick, mucky mud at the bottom of a stagnant pond.
Right, not exactly a pristine environment.
Exactly. And it grows up to the murky water, and the leaf floats right on the surface. But if you observe a lotus leaf, you'll notice that water never actually soaks into it.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Because of thousands of microscopic hairs on the surface, the water just beads up and rolls right off. The leaf lives its entire life immersed in the water and the mud, yet it remains completely untouched and untainted by it.
So it's basically naturally waterproof.
Completely.
Hmm.
And Krishna is saying a person practicing karma yoga should live in the mud of their worldly duties exactly like this.
So we are meant to be deeply planted in our daily lives, like our careers, our families, our civic duties. But we must cultivate a psychological waterproof coating so the stress and toxicity don't, soak into our core.
Exactly. You are in the world, but not of it.
So how do we actually become waterproof? Are there practical steps in the texts, or is it just a poetic ideal?
Right. I want to avoid treating this like some mystic secret. The sources are actually very pragmatic. Becoming waterproof requires two distinct pillars: proper action and proper attitude.
Okay, let's break down proper action first.
So the text categorizes human action into three types: tamasic, rajasic, and sattvic. To practice karma yoga, you have to elevate the quality of your actions.
Got it.
You must avoid tamasic actions completely. These are actions rooted in delusion, laziness, or a desire to cause harm. Then, you actively minimize rajasic actions, which are entirely selfish, ego-driven, and fueled by a craving for personal glory.
Okay, and the third one?
Finally, you focus all your energy on sattvic actions, which are pure, selfless, and done simply because they are the right thing to do.
Let's bring this into the modern workplace to make sure we are grasping it. So tamasic action would be like actively sabotaging a coworker's project because you're feeling petty.
Yes, exactly.
And rajasic action would be working 80 hours a week and stepping on people just to steal the credit and get a promotion.
Spot on.
And sattvic action would be mentoring the junior team member who is struggling simply because it helps the team, regardless of who gets the spotlight.
That is a perfect translation of the concepts. Doing the work meticulously, because the work itself has value, without the ego attachment. But proper action is only half the equation.
Right, what's the second pillar?
The second pillar is proper attitude, and this is what actually acts as the waterproof coating on the leaf. Proper attitude means you offer all of those high-quality sattvic actions to a higher purpose.
Like what kind of purpose?
Whether you conceptualize that as the divine, the universe, or just the greater good of your community. And then, whatever the outcome is, you accept it as prastam, which translates to a gracious gift.
Now hold on, I'm going to challenge this a bit.
Go for it.
Because that sounds beautifully serene, but isn't it just a recipe for becoming emotionally numb or apathetic? I mean, if water just rolls right off me, does that mean I stop caring about my work? Do I stop caring if my business fails or if my family is struggling?
That is perhaps the most common misconception about Eastern philosophy. But there's a massive difference between apathy and equanimity.
Okay, how so?
Well, apathy means you don't care enough to try. It's a defense mechanism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Equanimity means you care deeply. You engage fully and passionately. You put in your absolute best effort. But your internal foundation isn't shattered if the outcome isn't what you expected.
Oh, I see.
You are completely invested in the doing, but detached from the result.
It's like baking an incredibly complex cake for a friend's birthday. You put hours into it, you use the best ingredients, you care deeply about the process. But if someone accidentally bumps the table and the cake falls on the floor, you don't have a total psychological breakdown.
Right?
Because the joy was in the act of making it for them. the outcome is kind of out of your hands.
A wonderful analogy. But, achieving that kind of equanimity requires dealing with some serious internal friction, namely our deeply ingrained desires and our anger when those desires are thwarted.
And this brings us to the pain of managing the mind, because the commentary from J.K. Ogg shares a really striking story about this process.
Yes, the sculptor's story.
Right. So imagine a rough, unshaped piece of wood that approaches a master sculptor and says, "Please make me beautiful." The sculptor asks, "Are you prepared for what that takes?"
And the wood agrees.
Yeah, but as soon as the sculptor starts hammering and chiseling away the rough edges, the wood cries out in agony, "Stop, this hurts!" The sculptor replies, "If you want to become a beautiful deity, you must endure the pain of the chisel."
The powerful image.
The wood keeps begging for breaks, wanting to give up, but the sculptor persists, and eventually that rough wood is transformed into a stunning masterpiece.
The profound realization here is that the chisel is life itself. The painful process of being chiseled is us working out what the texts call raga and dvesha.
Raga and dvesha, what are those?
They are our deep-seated attachments and our intense aversions. We all have this constant, exhausting urge to control everything around us. We try to aggressively pull things toward us that we like. That's raga. Okay. And we violently push away things we don't like. That's dvesha.
So what does this all mean? The chisel isn't just bad luck or a punishment. The chisel is the actual psychological friction we experience every single time our expectations clash with reality.
Exactly.
Because we are constantly blaming the outside world for our stress. We say, if only my boss was different, or if only I had a bigger house, or if only the traffic wasn't so bad.
We project all our unhappiness outward.
Right. But the sources are basically pointing out that the problem isn't the traffic or the boss. The problem is our absolute psychological dependence on those external factors going exactly our way.
And this exposes a harsh reality about human nature that verse 5.22 warns us about. It states that enjoyments born from sensory contacts are actually sources of sorrow.
Wait, enjoyments are sources of sorrow. Why?
Because they all have a beginning and an end. They are fundamentally temporary. If your happiness depends entirely on things you can lose, your job title, your youth, a specific relationship, a new gadget, you are essentially planting the seeds of your own future misery.
Oh, that makes sense.
The moment you acquire the object of your desire, the countdown to losing it, or simply getting bored of it, begins.
Yeah, think about that empty feeling you get, like 2 days after you finally buy the thing you've been obsessing over for months.
It just vanishes.
The thrill is just gone. You're back to baseline, looking for the next hit of dopamine. Or think about the growing pains of breaking a bad habit. It physically hurts to stop looking at your phone every 5 minutes, but you have to endure that friction to reclaim your attention.
And this raises the critical test of karma yoga. Can we withstand that friction? Verse 5.23 states that if you can withstand the impulses of lust and anger, the violent urges to satisfy your desires or lash out when they are thwarted, if you can withstand that while you are still alive, right here in this body, you are truly a happy person. You become a master of your own internal landscape rather than a slave to your impulses.
Wait, I'm stuck here. I understand the value of being patient and not lashing out at my coworkers. But the sources claim that enduring this pain eventually unlocks an ultimate cosmic knowledge about who we are.
Yes.
So how does enduring the pain of a stressful day at the office, even if I handle it well, suddenly trigger a profound identity shift? What is the actual bridge between being patient and being enlightened?
That is the core mechanism of the entire philosophy. See, when you constantly react to every single desire and every single frustration, your ego is incredibly loud.
Okay, I definitely feel that.
Right. It is generating so much mental noise that you can't hear anything else.
Yeah.
But when you start enduring the chisel, when you stop reacting, when you let the results roll off you like water on the lotus leaf.
The noise starts to quiet down.
Exactly. The noise of the ego begins to fade. And when the ego quiets down, you finally have the clarity to perceive the baseline reality underneath it. This is the transition from karma yoga, the yoga of action, into jnana yoga, the yoga of knowledge.
So the action is just the training ground to quiet the mind enough to handle the knowledge.
Precisely.
And what is this ultimate knowledge we are trying to uncover?
The core of this teaching is unlearning the most deeply ingrained assumption we have. The idea that I am this physical body and this specific personality. Jnana yoga is the shift to the realization I am the eternal consciousness that is merely pervading this body.
Here's where it gets really interesting, and I want to use an analogy from the Advaitam commentary because
Mhm.
this completely shifted how I think about my own identity.
It's a fantastic analogy.
Imagine you are holding up your hand in front of your face. If I ask you what you see, you say, "That's my hand," and you identify with it. But then, think about the physics of the room. You only see your hand because there's light bouncing off it. If we turn off the light, the hand is still there, but you can't see it. The hand is just the physical object being illuminated. The actual pervasive reality in the room is the light.
That is a brilliant framework. We spend our whole lives obsessing over the hand, our physical appearance, our job titles, our social status.
Yeah.
But the ancient sages are telling us we aren't the hand, we are the light illuminating it. The body is just a temporary medium of transaction. It belongs to the material world. It has a birth date and an expiration date.
But the light doesn't.
No, the consciousness, the light that allows you to experience being alive, is eternal, all-pervading, and entirely untouched by the decay of the material world.
So when I look at you, or when you, the listener, look at a stranger on the street, you shouldn't just see their physical personality or their demographic labels. You're just seeing another hand illuminated by the exact same source of light.
And this realization creates the ultimate, highest form of empathy. It leads to a state called samadarshanam, which translates to equal vision.
Equal vision.
Yes.
Yeah.
Verse 5.18 describes this beautifully. It says, a wise person sees a learned scholar, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and an outcast with absolute equal vision.
An elephant, a dog, and a scholar. That is quite a spectrum to treat equally.
On the physical, material level, they're obviously completely different. They have different capabilities and different natures. But the wise person sees that the exact same light of consciousness animates every single one of them.
Wow.
The physical differences are just incidental bodies, like different colored light bulbs plugged into the exact same electrical grid. When you see the same light in yourself that exists in everyone else, true empathy is born.
Because you aren't separate anymore.
Exactly. You don't just tolerate other people. You recognize your shared existence. You feel their joy and their pain because, at the fundamental level of consciousness, the boundary between you and them doesn't actually exist.
That is just profound. You know, you probably started listening to this deep dive today wondering if you needed to run away to a quiet cabin just to find 5 minutes of peace.
I think we all have that urge sometimes.
But what we've uncovered from chapter 5 of the Bhagavad Gita is incredibly empowering. You don't need to quit your life. You don't need to abandon your family, your community, or your ambitions.
Escaping the physical world does not free you from the internal one.
Exactly the opposite. Freedom comes from changing how you engage with the world, by acting selflessly and letting the results roll off you like the lotus leaf,
Right.
and by enduring the growing pains of letting go of your endless attachments, and by recognizing that shared light of consciousness in everyone you meet. If you can do that, the sources say you achieve Jivan Mukti.
Yes, Jivan Mukti.
That is absolute freedom here and now, right in the middle of your loud, chaotic, wonderful daily life.
It is a lifetime of practice, requiring immense patience with yourself, but it is achievable. And as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a final thought to ponder.
Oh, I love these.
The very last verses of this chapter, verses 27 through 29, act as a bridge to the next stage of the journey. They describe a sage who has mastered this active life in the world and is now finally sitting down to meditate.
Okay.
They shut out all external contacts. They fix their gaze. They equalize their breath.
So they are taking all that energy they use to manage the world and turning the spotlight entirely inward.
Precisely. We've spent all this time learning how to find peace while moving and acting in the chaotic world. But these final verses offer a different kind of challenge for you tonight.
What's the challenge?
Before you go to sleep, put the phone away. Sit in the quiet for just a few minutes. Find that space between your breaths and ask yourself a difficult question. When you strip away your job, your titles, your anxieties, and your daily chaos.
What universe of absolute stillness is actually left behind? Think about that the next time you feel the urge to throw your phone in a lake and run away to that cabin in the woods. Because the peace you are looking for in that isolated cabin, it's already sitting right there inside you. You just have to clear away the mud to see it.